Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we're back on the Hercules Hobbies Actros. All being well, we'll get far enough it's going to be a rolling chassis by the end of the video. We're starting with step 30, the rear lights. This bag covers 9 steps this time. A lot of them are fairly straightforward with only a few fiddly bits to worry about. With the contents of the bag decanted into pots, we can collect up all the bits for step 30. We're going to need the steel brackets that mount the light clusters, 2 M3x4s, 4 M2x5s. Now there's some similar length screws in the kit, so measure them to make sure you've got the right ones. And lastly for the screws we need 4 2x6 self-tappers. There's a few plastic bits we need too. There's Y11 and Y12, the large bits that the clusters mount to. R11 and R12, the clusters themselves. There's also R10 number plates around, but we're not going to bother fitting it. If we do end up with number plates, I'll get some made up with custom numbers. We've got BB1 and BB2, the red bits of the lenses, and there's a pair of AA2s and a pair of AA9s. The AA9s are reversing lights, so they can stay clear. The AA2s though are the indicators, so they're going to need a coat of some clear orange on the inside. To make it easier, we will use some blue tack to stick the lenses face down so we can paint them without having to chase them around the table or accidentally touching the painted surface. One coat of Tamiya clear orange should be plenty, but if you want them a little bit darker, a second coat is okay. Too much though, and it will start blocking out the light. While that dries, we can attach the Y11 and 12s to the steel brackets. Y11 fits to the left bracket with 2 of the M2 screws, and Y12 fits to the right hand bracket. It's very easy to get them the right way round, as they really won't fit if you try and fit them the wrong way round. To the outside faces of those assemblies we need to fit R11 and R12. If we had some lights ready to go, we'd fit them before assembling. There's 2 5mm and 2 3mm LED holes to make up the set. There's a slightly odd combination of screws. On the top there's 2 small self-tappers, which make good sense, but on the bottom we've got an M3x5, which seems a bit out of place, but I suppose it does the job. With the screws in and nipped up, we need to fit the lenses. I've left it all a good few hours to make sure the paint's nice and dry, and I've given the inside of the buckets a quick coat of silver to try and reflect a bit more light out of the lenses. To put the lenses together, we will use some Humberol poly cement, the one that comes with a metal tube for application. We can very carefully run a thin bead along the edges where the small lenses drop in. To attach the lenses to the buckets, we need to run some glue around the edge and very carefully press the lens into place. We just need to be very careful that we don't push the inserted lenses out. Build up both and put them to one side. The glue does grab fairly quickly, but it won't be completely solid for a good few hours. To really make sure, it's not a bad idea just to leave them overnight. Step 31, the side skirts. We've got a pair of AA5 lenses that come from the clear parts tree. Now we could paint them orange, but I think we'll end up leaving them clear for that slightly more modern look. Next there's 2 N19s, the chrome light buckets, 2 T19s, the LED clips, T6 and T10, the rear parts of the front wheel arch liners, H1 and H2, the side skirts themselves, and a pair of H3s that lock into bits on the battery tray to shore it all up. For screws, there's 4 M2x4s, 4 M2x8 self-tappers, and 4 2x6 self-tappers. The 2 skirts are a mirror image of each other, so we will just build one in the video. We're going to put the one at the top of the diagram together. Starting with the light, we need to pop a lens in the hole from the inside. Follow that with one of the chrome buckets, fitting it over the 2 posts. Third is one of the LED clips. Now they have the slot upwards, but it really doesn't matter which way up it goes. To keep it in, we just use 2 of the M2x4s. Now it's worth noting I found if you over tighten the screws even just a little, the posts have a tendency to split. I'm not sure if the Tamiya kit would do the same. It could just be a sign of the Hercules plastics not being quite as good as Tamiya's. In the middle at the bottom we need to fit H3. The long end goes towards the front and it's held in with 2 2x8 self-tappers. At the front we've got the arch liner. The mounting holes are slotted, so all we need to do is start threading 2 of the 2x6 self-tappers into the posts on the skirt, just so there's enough of a gap under the heads for the liner. Then press the liner onto the screws and nip them up. nice little assembly other than the light mounting posts. We just need to repeat for the other one and we can move on. Step 32, the rear lights and the front bits of the rear arches. We're going to need the two tail light assemblies, Y3 and Y4, the front bits of the arches. The stick, apparently, it's a 45mm long aluminium tube from the parts bag. 3 M3x12s, 2 M3x15s, 2 3x8 self-tappers, and 2 2x8 self-tappers. The front bits of the arch fit to the plastic bit on the chassis that makes up the front leaf mount, and at the top there's another screw that goes straight into the chassis. Starting with the top one, which is an M3x15, we'll fit it so it's just starting to grab. We'll still need to be able to move the arch around a bit to fit the two 2x8 self-tappers in the bottom holes. When we come to fitting the top section of the arch, we're probably going to have to loosen them up again anyway. At the back we have a tail light. The outer hole gets one of the 3x8 self-tappers, and the inner hole an M3x12. That needs to get threaded into the aluminium tube. Again, there's no point in doing them up tight just yet. We'll wait until the top bits are on too. Now we just rinse and repeat on the other side, and we've got step 32 complete. Step 33 then, attaching the side skirts and the tops of the arches. Now along with the chassis and the side skirts, we're also going to need Y13 and 14, the arch tops. We also need 8 M2x4s, 4 M2x6s, and 4 M2 plain nuts. I found the easiest way to fit the arch tops is to fit 2 of the M2x6s a few turns at one end, enough that they won't fall out, but with enough clearance under the heads that you can still slide them into the front arch section. They're a fairly stiff fit, but they do go in. Then before tightening them up, we can install the 2 screws at the other end. Make sure everything's square, then nip up all the screws, keeping in mind of course that they're tiny machine screws going into plastic, so watch the torque. The tabs at the bottom of the side skirts drop into the bits at the end of the battery tray, and the holes at the ends at the top line up with the steel stays we fitted to the chassis right near the beginning. From the outside we can install a pair of M2x6s with the nuts on the inside. Now at this stage they're quite easy to get out with a cross wrench to nip them up, but once all the electronics are in they are a bit fiddly, so a good pair of pliers does help. As usual, that's only one side, so we need to repeat on the other. Very nice. Step 34, the mechanism deck. That sounds good. We need the deck itself, P5, the cab mount, Q2, 1 M3x12, 8 M3x6s, and the aluminium antenna mount. First we'll attach the antenna mount to the cab mount. It uses the M3x12 that goes up through the bottom of the cab mount and into the antenna mount. To get a good grip, an Allen key through the slot does help a lot. Now we probably won't be using the mount for anything in the end. 2.5 gig antennas probably won't reach, and having the antenna outside the cab isn't all that scale anyway. The mechanism deck sits on the chassis around the motor. All the holes in the chassis are threaded, so it's just a case of lining it up and fitting the 6 M3x6s. Then, just behind the deck, we fit the cab mount with the last 2 screws. Now it's a shame that there's a big cutout in the corner of the deck. If I remember correctly, it was for the mechanical indicator light control on the older trucks. There was a push rod that operated switches to turn the lights on and off from the steering. Step 35, the radio mount. Now this is a super simple one. We just need P3 and a pair of 3x8 self-tappers. The mount just fits over and screws down to 2 posts on the deck so it straddles the motor. Now if we were to install all the electronics, we'd pop a receiver in there now, but this model is to become a test platform for some secret custom electronics, so for now we won't be fitting a receiver. Step 36, install the battery. Well, since there's no ESC or receiver yet, we can skip this one. Step 37, servo adjustment. Again, we haven't got a radio, so we can't really adjust anything. But we did use a servo tester to set up the servos during the build, so they should be pretty close. Step 8, would you believe? I think they lost the 3 there. Building the rear wheels. The wheels come in 2 parts, V1 and V2, and we will of course need 2 pairs. To bolt the wheels together, we need 6 M2x5 cap heads and 6 M2 plain nuts. The outside wheels have little nubs that locate in holes on the inside wheels. Then, in between, there are holes for the screws and the nuts. However, before screwing them together, it's a lot easier to fit the tyres first. The wheels should just press through the tyres with a fair amount of massaging and stretching. The tyres are pretty stiff, so it can be a bit tricky, but keep working them until they look square in the wheel. Just like Tamiya, they want us to glue the tyres onto the wheels, but I've never glued the ones on the Grand Hauler and they've never come adrift. It is possible though that the wheels could spin inside the tyres, but they're so hard I think the tyres are going to run out of grip first. To attach the two wheels, we need to pop a nut into one of the hex-shaped holes on the inside of the inside wheel, then screw in one of the screws from the outside of the outside wheel. There's 3 screws to do and 2 sets to make. When they're all done, they do look rather nice. The quality of the chrome is pretty much well up there with Tamiya's. Step 39, the front wheels. Now there's nothing to these really, we just need to push the wheels into the tyres and square them up. Very nice. Step 40, attaching the wheels. We're going to need the rest of the bits from the parts bag. We've got 4 1150 bearings, 2 hexes and 4 M4 flange nuts. Now unlike most trucks, the hexes use splines rather than pins. One less thing to lose and they should be plenty strong enough. The hexes just slide onto the shafts. Next is a rear wheel, then to hold it all together we use one of the nuts. Repeat on the other side and that's the rear done. For the front wheels we need to install a bearing in each side. The inside is easy to do as it's flush, but to get the outside bearing in you can use the big end of the cross wrench to press it in. Then we fit a nut, but this time we need to be very careful to set the tension. It's possible if you do them up tight to completely lock up the wheel. We want to tighten it so it just starts to feel stiff, then back it off a little bit until the wheel spins completely freely. If you leave the bearing tight, it really won't last very long. It's really good to take the time to set it all up correctly. Fit the last wheel and we've got a rolling chassis. A rather nice rolling chassis I think. It all feels rather nice and solid. Other than the sloppy steering, but that's not any worse than Tamiya's. I'm really quite impressed. So that's it for this week. Next time on the Actros we'll make a start on the cab, which should be interesting. As always then, thanks for watching, like if you liked, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment if you got something to say. Bye guys!